Good afternoon. Good afternoon. We gather this afternoon in joyful and loving memory of Irwin, Saul, Loibman, Irv. We're glad you are here. Look at the number of people around here who Irv's life has touched. Especially we're glad for Sean, David, and Dawn, his 3 children, and 11 grandchildren, who are collectively the most beautiful-looking people I've ever seen. We're glad that you're here. We're glad that Karen, his companion of many years, is here as well. We're glad that all of you from UU Miami and from All Souls are here as well, and family and friends who've known him for a very, very long time. I begin by reading a selection from the book of Ecclesiastes. Irv would have absolutely loved this. The book of Ecclesiastes was almost forbidden by rabbis from the Orthodox tradition because it was not orthodox in its theology. In fact, today nobody is sure how it made it into the Hebrew canon, so Irv would have loved it. In fact, many of you know the words. For everything there is a season, and a time for every matter under heaven. A time to be born, and a time to die. A time to plant, and a time to pluck up what is planted. A time to kill, a time to heal. A time to break down, a time to build up. A time to weep, and a time to laugh. A time to mourn, and a time to dance. For everything there is a season, and a time for every matter under heaven. Irv grew up in Pittsburgh. For those of you who are not sure what Pittsburgh is, it's cold right about now. And grew up in a Russian and Polish Jewish background, and immediately rebelled and goes off to Kent State, where he gets involved in the anti-war. Now, those of you who are of a certain age will know what this is all about. For the rest of you who are younger, you'll have no clue. It was a highly volatile time, and that's how Irv got to know Unitarian Universalism at Kent State. But he was a very interesting man. He was unflappable and in many ways very, very undefensive, very not aggressive. But man, was he a person of conviction. He went off to Vista. Does anybody even remember what Vista is? Went off to Vista in the Salinas Valley, and some of the stuff he did is still there. Then he decides to join the Peace Corps and goes off to Jamaica. Now, I don't know if you're aware of the trouble he got into immediately when he got into Jamaica. He goes up to a mountaintop, and he was supposed to express his great feelings about the mountaintop, which he did, and also said why he thought the Vietnam War was awful, etc., etc., etc. And the authorities came and escorted him back to the mountaintop to suggest he erase this, which he did, but he made his point. Very quietly, no arguing, but he made his point and would continue, a man of very strong convictions. He would like, I think, the next reading, because it speaks what I hope that he would think of us today. For we have a unique task in a memorial service. On one hand, we mourn. Somebody's died. Somebody who we know has died. And that's not a time for rejoicing, it's a time for sadness. And I don't care how you cut it, any time you go to a memorial service, you can't help but think of your own mortality. So it's a complex series of emotions that each person brings. But then on the other hand, if you knew Irv, he wouldn't want us here moaning and groaning. Let there be no moaning at the bar. And I'm not thinking of the alcohol bar. He would want us also to celebrate his life. In that vein, I read from, oddly enough, a Roman poet, Seneca, who sounds as if he's writing in 2018. First sentence, in the presence of death, we must continue to sing the song of life. Does that sound like Irv? We must be able to accept death and go from its presence better able to bear our burdens and to lighten the load of others. Out of our sorrows should come understanding. Through our sorrows, we join with all those who before us have had to suffer and all of those who will yet have to do so. Let us not be gripped by the fear of death. If another day be added to our lives, let us joyfully receive it, but let us not anxiously depend on our tomorrows. Though we grieve the deaths of our loved ones, we accept them and hold on to their precious memories as gifts. Let us make the best of our loved ones while they're with us. And I think Irv would love this last sentence best. Let us not bury our love with death. A couple of more thoughts. Fish Creek. No, that's not right. Fish Eating Creek. Does anybody have any idea what Fish Eating Creek is? Some of you are raising your hands. 3 decades ago, that's where Karen and Paul met. He smelled coffee, literally, saw pancakes, and invited himself down. Yes, he did. Some random thoughts. Irv loved to eat. He had no sense of direction. Did you know he has a master's degree in family therapy? Something most people didn't know. When he came from Jamaica to Miami, he was getting food stamps, and he was so good at this, they made him in charge of the program. He loved this show, and by the way, it's a terrific show called Death in Paradise. One of the seasons reminded him of Jamaica. He loved talking to Father Anthony in the hospital. And then, I don't know how many of you have ever known this, but when Irv was operated on several years ago, they took out a major section of his brain. And yet he continued to thrive, continued to engage, and how I have no idea. And I remember visiting him in the hospital, and his take on things, both current and past, was, as the English say, spot on. And doing that with a major disability. He sung the song of life. Always. We are lucky to have an interlude. 3 Sheets to the Wind is going to play some music for us.
Hi, everybody. So it's our pleasure, our joy to be part of this amazing service this afternoon. I'm glad Bill Gatto and Seth Turner joined to join me today. And for Irv's 70th birthday, he invited the band to play over at his house in Coral Gables. So one of those wonderful sort of sunny afternoons, but clouds overhead. But Irv, sort of with all his friends sitting around, he was enjoying the music. But when we played this song, which I understand was one of his favorite songs, he came out to the edge of the grass, and I swear he started moving his hips just a little bit, moving around a little bit, and this is one of those tunes that goes so much better if people sing along with it. So.
We're lucky to have members of the family to be able to speak today. And then we have another friend of the family who's very close to Irv, Ira, and Sean and Dawn are all going to speak. And then finally, Judy Homer is going to represent UU Miami and sharing with us all the things that Irv did when he was here. So let me call on Ira. I have, in my own way, quietly and gently reminded everybody to speak not longly. We have a huge reception afterwards, and that is a great time for long stories and friendship to be renewed. So I'll ask Ira if he would come forward first. Thank you very much, Ira.
Popped right up. Was that Irv who did that? Dear Irv, coming into surgery with me 2 weeks ago while you yourself were lying seriously ill in a hospital bed in Jackson, your very presence reassured me that I would wake up. Because that's what you did, time and time and time again. you woke up from surgery. So I will be calling upon you in the future whenever I need your strength in me. Thank you. Irv, I am forever grateful for you sending me Heat memorabilia and tapes of the Neil Rogers radio show while I was in New Orleans in the 1990s. It was a time when you started having benign brain tumors. You called it a genetic disposition, but you had so many genetic dispositions that were lovable. The saddest thing for me today is that we can't talk about sports. You're bringing Dwayne Wade to the Miami Heat and all the wonderful things that we would do. Dear Irv, when Karen called me to tell me about your passing, she said, but there's one little problem. The hospital got your date of birth wrong. Are you kidding? Haven't we played this card before? Remember when we sent up 50 balloons over Biscayne Bay to celebrate your 50th birthday? The balloons read, "Celebrate Irv's birthday, dump Reagan." I am wearing today the last surviving balloon that didn't go up, thankfully, because it had a hole in it, so it couldn't fly. About a week later, Irv calls me up. Boss! I don't know why he called me boss. I don't know why he called me coach. But those were words he called me. Boss! I made a mistake. It wasn't my 50th birthday. It was my 49th birthday. So here you are, once again, messing with Karen, me, and everybody else. But we did get your certificate of birth and death. Anyone who wants to hear about that bucket list trip to Jamaica that Irv and I took in late 2014 over food and drink, just ask me. Dear Irv, today is your final destination, and I'm wearing the Dump Reagan, Celebrate Irv balloon, a straw hat, a printed shirt. These are my tributes to you. We're all here today to celebrate you. We're sad but happy too. For you got the most out of life, especially those wonderful years with your loving and adventurous partner, Karen Paul. I want to end by saying that the presence, and I'm going to have trouble saying this, but the presence of your 3 children today, it would have made Irv cry. He loved you unconditionally. It made no difference what you said to him or did to him. He still continued to love you. I hope that you come to appreciate how hard Irv struggled as a single parent his whole life to educate you and to bring you health and happiness. So on behalf of the good doctor, my wife Rochelle, and myself, I wish the children and all of you in this congregation health and happiness. Thank you, Irv, for everything.
Sean? You want to come together? Okay. Dawn? Sean?
Thank you all. First, I'd like to thank you all for your support. It means so much to all of us. And I apologize if I get a little emotional. Irwin, Irv, as most of you know him, was my father. But he was also a father to Dawn and David, grandfather to Elaine, Royale, Damari, Ashley, Zion, Joshua, Jordan, Davinia, Jamari, DJ, and Rosetta. We all have memories of Irwin, my dad. I want to share some of the most precious childhood memories with you now. My dad was always a hard worker. While raising 3 kids in Opelika, he went back to school, earned his master's degree, and we never heard him complain about hours or how hard it was to raise me and my siblings. My dad believed in hard work, honesty, and a love of different cultures and customs. I remember when I was about 16, I thought I was a big shot because I had a couple of odd jobs. My brother and I were in the landscaping business, which consisted of 2 employees. Yes, you guessed it. My brother and I were it. We went out with Dad's lawnmower and cut several of our neighbors' yards for cash. On the weekends, my dad would take us to the flea market and allow my brother and I to load and unload a vendor's truck filled with tools and heavy equipment for $25 each. Of course, this was big money back then. So I began to think how I could best use this hard-earned cash. In Opelika, we lived in a very modest 3-bedroom, 1-bath house. Siblings, 1 bath. Think about it. That was built in the 1920s, BC. Our home was filled with many fond memories of heat. Yes, heat. Temperatures were in the high 90s, and it was like living in a sauna in the summer. So I came up with an idea. Since we didn't have central air conditioning, I wanted to install a wall unit in my room and at least see how my friends felt when I visited their homes after school. After several attempts to convince my dad to install this unit in my room, he gave in. He told me that I can pay for the AC unit, he would pay to install it into the wall, and then he would average up the last 3 months of the electrical bills and charge the overage to me. And I thought, I won! Loving life, I blasted that little AC unit all day, all night. My brother and sister wanted to hang out with me in my room because I was the cool one, literally. Then the electric bill came a few weeks later. Dad brought me the bill and told me the amount I owed him was $85. After cutting a few more yards, I raised the money and paid the bill. Shortly after that, I unplugged that AC unit, and it became another fixture in my room. I remember thinking, it's not so bad in here. I could just open the window and enjoy the breeze. It was a valuable lesson my dad taught me. About responsibility. And nothing is free in this world. Irwin Loibman, my father, loved life, loved his children, grandchildren. He loved Karen and her children, and he loved his friends. He was a fighter through all the health challenges And at the end, God called him up to rest, kick his feet up, and cheer his family and friends through this journey of life. Again, I want to thank you, our family, our friends, for your support. And Dad, we love you.
Oh boy. I'm Dawn, the oldest, even though I look the youngest. I want to say my father was a great man. He was strong, and I want to believe that I get my strength from him. I'm going to miss his strange sense of humor. You know how he can be sometimes. I'm going to really miss him. And he'll forever be in my heart.
Hello, everybody. All right. Well, they're well prepared. I don't know what to say, but Damari telling me, rethink what you're going to say. I had my friend come in with the shirt said, "You stand up, stand up. Are you mad, bro?" Yes, I'm mad. So, yeah, my kids is here. Stand up, please. The oldest first. Yeah, come on out of it. Come, line them up. Come on 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 up. Yeah. Yeah. I'm gonna make it short. Now, I want to know that I love everybody. I thank you, Karen, to make this thing situated. You know, I need help, such as I have a little disability, you know, him. So, Damari, Davina, Royale, Zion, Jamari, Rosetta, DJ. I appreciate y'all here, and let's make this thing right from now on. I really want to become a better father. Okay. I go home. Amen, everybody. All right. All right, yeah.
Judy Homer has known Irv for many, 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 many years, and has graciously consented to also share with us today. Irv was a chairman of the board of this congregation for many years, and shared with me some of the work that he did as a chairman. The man was fabulous under great, interesting times. So, Judy, if you'd be kind enough to share with us as well.
Dear, dear Irv, I miss you so much. We all do. His death has left a big hole in our hearts. Irv and I served on many committees together here at this congregation. Irv was chair of the Social Justice Committee on numerous occasions. Working toward social justice for all was near and dear to his heart. He was president of the Board of Trustees at least twice, and he was the first male member of the Women's Alliance of the congregation. In fact, the women voted to include men in large part because of Irv. Irv was program chair of the Alliance. He developed a program and held a series called Women in Religion. He introduced fair trade to this congregation. He and Karen represented GA, General Assembly. GA is the annual meeting of our Unitarian Universalist Congregation Association. In fact, there's a funny story about Irv. GA is a very large gathering of people from all over the country. At the assembly in 2017, Irv grew tired and wanted to return to his hotel room. He was wandering the halls with his characteristic hat and cane, but he seemed a little confused, so a cleaning woman offered to help. Irv pointed to his room and she let him in. Irv got in bed, he ordered room service, and was eating a hamburger when the couple from that room, a couple from Indiana, returned to their room and found him in their bed. I asked Irv's friends to come up with a word or two to describe him. This is what I got. He was a brave, funny man who loved life and loved people. He was always for the underdog, the neediest of people. He was unflappable, intelligent, insightful, irreverent, irrepressible, irreplaceable. And I will add that he was a real mensch. A mensch is a person of integrity and honor. I would be remiss if I didn't mention Karen. Karen was his devoted, caring, loving, supportive companion for 23 years, seeing him through every surgery, every travail. He loved her dearly, and she him. Thank you, Karen, for always being there by his side.
One of the ancient parts of Judaism is remembering those who passed, and the Kaddish is now going to be played by Joseph. keep on listening to Irv talk to me saying, "You're reading too much Jewish literature." Reform Judaism has given us a treasure trove of great works to read, especially at times like this. And so I borrow from Gates of Prayer, which is the Reformed Jewish prayer book, and I hope you'll find the reading helpful today. When cherished ties are broken and the chain of love is shattered, only trust and the strength of faith can lighten the heaviness of the heart. At times, the pain of separation seems more than we can bear. But if we dwell too long on our loss, we embitter our hearts and harm ourselves and those about us. For the psalmist said that in his affliction he learned the law of God. And in truth, great is a great teacher when it sends us back. This sounds so much like Irv, when it sends us back to bless and serve the living. We learn how to counsel and comfort those who, like ourselves, are bowed with sorrow. We learn when to keep silence in their presence, or when a word will assure them of our love and concern. Thus, even when they are gone, the departed are with us, moving us to live as in their higher moments they themselves wish to live. We remember them now. They live in our hearts. They are an abiding blessing. Karen wrote in her blog, "Today is that final destination. I've been holding in my hand the last remaining balloon from Irv's 49th or 50th birthday. Like the balloons over Biscayne Bay, may Irv's memory soar over and into our heads, bringing us all many outrageous and cockamamie ideas." We remember them now. He lives in our hearts. He is an abiding blessing. Joseph? 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 Please. of things are going to happen now. First of all, let me explain that Unitarian Universalist congregation here has an auction every year. And at that auction last year, Irv bought a dramatic parody. And he said you could use it at my funeral. So to transition from one phase of today into the next, we're going to have a parody, something that he requested. And if you don't kind of get this at his funeral, just let me remind you of the back page of this bulletin to remind you that Irv would want not to take this too seriously. Then what we're going to do, we're going to now have probably one of the oldest pieces of writing in the entire Bible that's been discovered in archaeology. It's from Numbers. It's also, it turns out, one of the most famous and oldest benedictions used by both Jewish and Christian communities. After we have the blessing, the ancient tradition, we'll pause for a moment, and then Andrea will lead us in a transition, in a parody, and then we will have a time for a reception, a buffet, and the reggae music will play. For those of you that could stand, if you would, for a moment, as is appropriate for this benediction. And now may the Lord bless you and keep you. The Lord make his face to shine upon you and be gracious unto you. The Lord lift up his countenance upon you and give you peace. Amen. Please be seated. And now for a transition.
Good afternoon, everyone. I don't think I've ever followed a prayer before in doing these sort of things, but as Reverend Kloss mentioned, yes, Irv bought my parody at last year's service auction and did say, I want you to sing this at my memorial service. But he also added, but I'd really like to hear it. So, since I know he's in all of our hearts, I'm going to assume that he will hear it. Well, here's some things you may not know about Irv. He lived by his own rules and did with vim and verve. He tried to eat healthy, but if there was dessert, he'd eat it. He'd eat it. He loved Italian food and Indian too, but if you give him mayonnaise, a fit he'd through. But give him a donut or a brownie to chew, he'd eat it. Even if Karen knew, he'd eat it, eat it, eat it, eat it. Open up his mouth and eat it. It didn't matter what diet he's on. He'd eat the ice cream until it was gone. He'd eat it. Just eat it. Irv was in the Peace Corps in Jamaica, I hear. He worked for many causes that he held so dear. Supported fair trade and cared how farm workers were treated. He liked all sports and rooted for the home teams. UM, the Heat, the Dolphins when they reigned supreme. But then when they didn't win, he felt just like the team's defeated. So he'd go to the fridge and eat it, eat it, eat it, eat it. Open out his mouth and eat it. It didn't matter what diet he's on. He'd eat the ice cream until it was gone. He'd eat it. He'd eat it. He'd eat it. Just eat it. Woo! One more. Irv was so wonderful that his memories don't fit in one song, so I have another one. Irwin, Irwin, all these heartfelt words were so deserving. You've a special place in all our hearts for sure. All of your stories will endure. Caring, daring, a hole in every shirt that he was wearing. Never could remember which toothbrush was his, but Karen didn't care since they already kissed. Through all kinds of travel, some things would unravel when Irv would get lost or stray. In most cases, he'd end up in wrong places, but Karen would save the day. Those who'd seen him knew his hat and cane and would ID him. Many times he just was going out to find dessert. Lord help the rookie who came between Irv and his cookie. And Lord help the cookie who came between Karen and Irv.
Irv would have loved that. Irv is loving that. As is requested, let us now break, share stories, enjoy some food, and listen to some marvelous music. Thank you.